communication with parent is very important to understand that, okay, what is going on there, what is happening there. It's not a 1 hour thing, it's not magic that, okay, once a week you'll come to me for 1 hour. And making that balance between reality and imagination is our job with the parents, of course. It's not important what comes up in the canvas. It's important that, okay, when you were creating it, how did you feel? What did you feel? The product is not our goal. Our goal is how has the process been for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the India Autism Center podcast. This is your space for meaningful conversations about all things autism, inclusion, and today about creativity. Today, we're discussing how paintbrushes are not just, strokes and creative tools. They're actually a method for healing. We're talking about expressive arts therapy and how it empowers everyone, actually, but more so individuals with neurodiversity, especially children and young adults, to express themselves, to process, and also to connect. And to help us in doing that, we have Priyanka Chaudhary. She's an early childhood educator, a social work counselor, and an expressive arts practitioner. Priyanka, thank you so much for being here in this podcast. And I'm so happy to discuss this topic because this is something I also truly enjoy doing. So, yes, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I think I'm really looking forward to chatting and, for us to get to know more about this.
So let's get to it. Tell me, what is expressive arts therapy to begin with? And can you walk us through a very typical session of expressive arts?
So expressive arts is essentially the intermodal approach, which uses visual arts, which uses music, movement, storytelling, and drama. And these different creative modalities work as pathways for us to explore our emotions, to engage with our thoughts, and to express our experiences. A session will look different. It depends on the goals, it depends on the group or the individual and how they come together and what are their needs from the session.
What are usually the goals that people come with?
So some of the goals that people come with are, of course, expression. It can be even like collaboration. It can also be, things like waiting and taking turns, right? So depending on the goals that we are working on, a session is designed around that. So it's got a couple of grounding techniques, of course. We always check in with the client and how the client is doing and say how the week has been. The idea is to build connection because that is really, really important for us to increase expression. Because if your client does not trust you, if they don't feel safe with you, then, it somewhere hampers the process. So the idea is to build that connection, and of course we get into certain creative techniques. It again depends on what the client is comfortable with. So some clients are comfortable with visual arts, so they love coloring, they like drawing, so that is their way of expression. While for some it's movement, and for some it's also music. So yeah, it is pretty much depending on how they want the session and what are their needs. So that is.
So you described that there are different modalities like art, music, dance, whatnot. How do these specifically? You also said that it depends particularly on the person and the goals that the person have. So let's say you have someone that comes to you with a goal for being better socially.
Right.
What is it that you suggest to that client?
So first, of course, we will tap into the need, right? We'll explore, like you mentioned.
So you're like a counseling psychologist, is it?
I'm a social work counselor.
Okay.
Not a, so a counseling psychologist is different and a counselor is different.
Okay.
So
so you're a counselor.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the idea is to essentially understand the goal and also where it comes from. Okay, so it can also happen that the client shares that, okay, at home I'm able to like talk, but say when guests come in or when I'm out there, I'm not able to talk. So understanding the context, okay, where is it coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What is the fear that we are having for which communication becomes a little difficult, right? So tapping into those aspects can also help one to understand what is the root cause and what are some of the ways we can move forward to achieve the goal of being more social.
So let's say this person has come to you with like a social anxiety situation. What are you guiding them with? Like, what is the modality that you immediately think of at the top of your head that this is something that they have to explore, and they can't explain the situation to you too much.
Right.
So you might have people who come to you and you're not sure whether they've given you enough information. Is there like a questionnaire that you give to them? Is there, or you just get them into one modality or another?
So again, if we are talking about children, then getting context from the parents, that
Okay.
is something that is very important to understand what it is like back at home, what it is like with the primary caregivers. So with that, and after that, understanding the interest of the child, then I'm able to move forward. So if the parent tells me that oh, like my child loves to paint, so in the first few sessions, my goal would with the child wouldn't be to like work towards the problem. So as you said, it would be to build that connection. So it can happen that I am here, the child is there, and we are just creating art together, because that is something that the child relates with, and that is something that the child likes to do. So while creating art, then we will slowly build that connection, and with that connection, we will explore more. So with art, it can also be eventually that okay, we're building a story together. So that is how that's how organically we move from one modality to the other. So we created some arts. Okay, I've drawn mama, I've drawn papa, I've drawn my siblings. Okay, now what are they doing? Right? Do we want to add some friends? Okay, what are the friends doing? Who are the friends you want to add? So with this, exploring again through storytelling, and then it can even organically move to like role play.
Correct.
Drama.
So have you ever noticed situations in which, let's say, children particularly are drawing a story which doesn't seem very comfortable to you, and that seems like something you need to flag to the parents, but the parents are telling the truth in the fact that this is not the reality the child is living in. Has that ever happened?
Of course. I mean, that's definitely a thing that a child is making up stories because they are in their own imaginative world and everything. But that communication with parent is very important to understand that okay, what is going on there, what is happening there. Even probing the child that okay, where is this happening? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from maybe some random show that they've seen? They're just scrolling through the phone or something and they saw something, or on the road they saw something, and they're trying to place that in their story, right? So we do hold space for a lot of play, for a lot of imagination. Of course, making that balance between reality and imagination is our job with the parents, of course. But
do you think that
happen.
is necessary? Like, let's say if there's a child who's having an imagination, like he, she, they, whoever is thinking about, something that is not normal, so to speak, and you flag it to the parents, and the parents are again denying that this is not something that exists. Do you think there is use in really picking that situation apart?
If it's something uncomfortable, yes, because it is important to keep.
Can you give me like an example?
Maybe something, I mean, on the top of my head, maybe something about inappropriate touching, right? So if that is something that maybe the child is externalizing through a story, communicating that with the parent is important for us to be on the same page, right? Because it is important that I know context of the child, and it is important for the parents also to understand that okay, where is this coming from, and just working together to figure it out.
You have mentioned that the first important step in your job is connection, and then comes every other goal, and you choose whatever modality to align with that goal. Are there specific expressive arts therapy activities that you do once you've established that connection with, let's say, a neurodivergent child who likes to draw, likes to paint? Are there specific things that you start engaging them with?
Specific, again, like I mentioned, it would be very goal specific. So maybe you can like just tell me a goal and I can like help you with an example.
So let's say the goal is getting along with their sibling. Yeah. So what do you do in that situation?
In that situation, of course, there are certain grounding techniques that is very important.
Can you explain what grounding techniques?
So grounding techniques are essentially like, for example, Play-Doh. Right, say Play-Doh or clay. The tactile exploration, the tactile engagement helps in regulation, helps in soothing. Say drum tapping. When you're tapping drum, there is a predictability that you bring, a musical rhythm, a predictability that you bring, and that also helps in regulating the emotions or maybe the high intensity feelings that one goes through. Then even through storytelling, right? Storytelling is a very powerful tool because it creates a gap. Like, okay, I'm seeing a story and I'm representing that story, and my inner world is coming out through that expression. Through my storytelling, my inner world is coming out. So it creates a gap. It's not that, okay, I am probably in the picture. It can be that, there is A, there is B, and how are they engaging? So like you said, with siblings, storytelling can be a very, very powerful tool. Art can be a powerful tool where maybe we are creating, okay, let's create a safe space. What does your house look like? What does your safe, who are your safe people? So like that, through art or say through storytelling, navigating through a difficult sibling relationship could be very helpful.
So you must be getting a lot of people who probably don't believe in this. Like believe in expressive arts therapy. To them, it must just seem like another drawing class or a music
Correct,
class.
yeah.
What do you have to say to those people?
Again, there is a wrong notion that only if I'm good at art or I'm good at music can I engage in this process. But this skill is not something we are exploring. We are exploring the process. We are trusting the process. The product is not our goal. Our goal is, how has the process been for us?
Right.
Any creative process, whatever the prompt might be,
Right.
how has that process been for us? So expressive arts honestly is for everybody. It is not just verbal, but it also brings out your non-verbal emotions and thoughts through the different modalities.
Tell me something, Priyanka. I've seen a lot of cafes host. Oh, come and paint and release God knows what. Is that a proper expressive arts therapy activity?
So here we have to understand the difference between being in therapy and doing something therapeutic.
Okay.
Right? And there are two very, very different categories.
Correct.
A therapy session is a very different session, right? It can be short term, it can be long term. Like you mentioned in cafes, that is a therapeutic process you're entering. That is not therapy per se. That is not something that you're doing, say, one-on-one, or or you're doing exploring, because over one day you can't really explore everything that's been going on. So that is therapeutic, and it also depends on the person who's hosting it. So of course, formal training is very, very important. So these workshops are essentially very therapeutic in nature, where you're just tapping into your emotions, and maybe it's a light-hearted sort of a experience.
Correct. So clients, let's say, who come to you with, again, a very specific goal, is there, I'm guessing there is a consistency that they have to maintain with the
Correct.
sessions that
Correct, yeah.
that they're coming to you for. So it's not just a one-off thing that like a one day today, 1 hour and you're done,
Yeah.
right? It's not like that. And the clients that you deal with them like one-on-one?
So I do have one-on-one clients. I also have group sessions that I hold. So it really depends on what they come with. So
Got it. And I want to know if, let's say, you have someone that's navigating something really difficult through
hmm,
expressive arts, and they've started the session with you. How do you close it? How do you bring closure to the
hmm.
session when, let's say, people are leaving?
The termination bit
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Okay. So with termination bit again, it's more like it like we revisit some of the goals we have worked on. There's documentation, so everything that the client creates, we file them, we document them. So maybe showing them a glimpse of the work that they have done, of exploring, maybe sharing a prompt question um, about the session. We can ask them something like, if you had to describe what you felt in the sessions through a weather, what would that weather be, right? So bringing it to a close essentially, so that there's closure for both the parties, and of course opening up space for the future in case the client requires more sessions.
So let's zoom out a little. I'm trying to understand how you got into this field. A lot of your work in early childhood was inspired by Reggio Emilia's philosophy, which is often very misunderstood in the Indian context. Can you tell us all about the difference between maybe a Montessori and a Reggio philosophy? What would the difference be? Because folks in India have very few people have really heard of it. So if you can just delve into that.
Yeah. So the Reggio philosophy essentially places the child as the protagonist of the story. Um, it comes from a belief that children are fully capable individuals and they are in charge of their learning. So it is on us to be able to provide them that environment where they thrive, which depends on their needs, which depends on their interests, right? So instead of molding them in a particular structure, the idea is to catch on to their interests, to their goals, to their needs, and create a learning environment which caters to that, right? So the idea of Reggio is to create learning environments where the children can thrive, and it's something that is adaptable to their needs.
That sounds lovely. I read a little bit about it, and I've always been curious as to how it works in practice. Do you know of any schools maybe in India that are practicing Reggio Emilia's pedagogy, like fully in action? I think the Rishi Valley, is that one of them?
I'm not sure, but yeah, there are a few schools in Mumbai as well.
Oh.
There are a few schools in Bangalore, in fact, as well, which really focus on this philosophy.
This sounds lovely for, I think, just about everyone, but more so for individuals with, let's say, yeah, with neurodivergence, because it has just this very child-centered, very putting your in, like, whatever your inquiry is about the world forward, which is just lovely. How do you see maybe expressive arts being integrated into ECC, like into early childhood education for children with special needs? How do you see that happening?
So, I truly believe that expressive arts is an extension of early childhood education because, like you correctly mentioned, early childhood education is about being child centric. It's playful in nature, it's open ended in nature, right? And that is pretty much expressive arts for you. It's open ended, it is playful, it brings different kinds of creativity together, right? So it is an extension of early childhood where there can be a great balance between the two, where expressive arts is being that cushion, like if you want collaboration, collaboration being one of the goals, then creating a group art together, right? If you want say turn taking, a sharing circle, right, where you're also listening to others but also getting your turn to speak, right? So it's an extension where the creative modalities can be a great way to support the needs in early childhood development.
And I think what's important in this is also checking in.
Hmm.
Because, you can have these group arts and group projects and you can forget about who really didn't contribute to it. And I think that what makes these things really important, these activities, but also makes them very, very futile at an instant is if you forget to check in, if you forget to bring closure to this entire
Right.
activity. So you could be, all scribbling and painting something, but you were the one that didn't offer the crayon when someone else kind of maybe wanted it. And you were the one who was insistent in drawing something when everyone was doing it together.
Yeah.
And I think that expressive arts becomes is mostly to check in on the process of it.
Correct.
Did I understand that
Correct.
correctly?
The process. I think
Yeah.
that process being the keyword, that is very, very important. And I'd like to add to to something that you mentioned about who didn't contribute, or say silence for that matter, right? So in Reggio, there's a book, 100 languages of the 100 languages of children, and the 100 languages of children essentially tells you that we don't have one way of communication, right? Children don't have just one way of communication. They can communicate through art, they can communicate through all the different creative modalities. Even silence is a very, very acceptable mode of communication, right? So which is where again the discussion comes through, where even the process, what is happening in the process. So me as a therapy practitioner, I will see that, okay, who is able to who is doing what, right? What is their body language, how are they speaking to each other, are they communicating with each other, what is the discussion like, what are they thinking about, how are they creating it, who's creating. There can be some who just go into the center and create it, while there can be some who want to take their own space, be in the corner and create their own little thing, right? So this process is very, very important because it gives us glimpse of, how do we take on from that, right? It gives me a glimpse of, okay, so this has happened now, how do I what would be the next step for me, and how it'll also help me understand the language of each child. How do I talk to each child? It's not important what comes up in the canvas at the end of it. Correct. Right? It's important that, okay, when you were creating it, how did you feel, what did you feel, what was going on for you. So that process and trusting the process is very, very important.
I think it's so important because I know people, if I engage them in this creative arts, they would be like, please get me out of here. They'd be like, I don't want to think so much. So I think it's very, very, like you said, the connection's important. If I am not sold to the idea of this, then, even God can come down and nothing's going to work. And I think that's the thing about this expressive arts therapy, that the relation between both the client and the person who is helping execute needs to be like, they need to be on the same wavelength of accepting and, like you mentioned, trusting the process. So if you've been enjoying this podcast and you believe in the power of creative healing, so to speak, then please do think of liking, sharing, and subscribing. It helps us go a really, really long way in bringing this content to you. So Priyanka, you have worked with a lot of parents as well. What are the goals that parents often come to you with for their children, and what do you suggest that they go home and do? Because I'm sure that with all of the people that I've had in this podcast and with everyone that I've learned, is therapy is not just a 1 hour session, right? It's something that you go back, you work on. What are the strategies that you suggest to them to go back, work on, and maybe some strategies for their own mental health.
For the caregivers?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, it's very, very important to have reflective conversations with the caregivers. Uh, because, like you said, it's not a 1 hour thing. It's not magic that, okay, once a week you'll come to me for 1 hour and we'll achieve our goals, right? So talking to the parents, I mean, some of the most common goals we work on is expression, right? Is talking about what is going on. So that goal being represented in different ways, right? So having reflective conversations with parents, it's extremely important, not just to talk about what has been happening in the session, or not just about the child's progress, so to speak, but also the context. That, okay, you say that your child is not talking, right, to say the guests. So at home, who is the child comfortable with, right? Is it a specific guest, or is it just everyone? So getting that context also helps me to work with them, to know that, okay, this could be something that we can discuss, or this is something that we need to tap on, right? And even with the caregivers, allowing them to make mistakes is also very, very important. Holding space for those mistakes is very, very important, because everyone's trying their best. So, and also, like, letting them know that, okay, maybe, like in my session, like I spoke to you about some grounding techniques. So I feel that your child really connected with the Play-Doh technique, like just squeezing it.
Yeah.
So telling the parent that, okay, why don't you make Play-Doh accessible at home? So if there is a situation where, say, your child is not being able to regulate their emotions, they have the Play-Doh to reach out to. And that also brings a connection between the work I am doing in my therapy session plus home. So it builds that connection, which is very, very important. I can't be talking to the child a particular way and then the child goes back to a different way of communication. So striking that connection is very important. If I'm telling the parent that, okay, you know what, when your child is angry, your child just likes to just scribble through the paper. So then the parent knows that, okay, if there comes a situation where my child is feeling angry,
This is a way
I
to cope.
I can offer colors and paper, and then we can just scribble together, right? So mirroring also helps. So it's happened that, say, my client just, something vulnerable came up, and the client is just like, just coloring. I'm mirroring the client. So then we can form a connection, because the client is seeing that, okay, the person opposite me is connecting with me. The person is doing the exact same thing, right? So it can build that connection. It can build that thought that, okay, we are a team, right? And just when someone is experiencing a lot of emotions, and if they have someone to make them feel like, hey, we're a team, I think that
That makes all the difference. And
yeah,
I
that
think,
makes all the difference.
I think what I take away from speaking with you is that connection, trust, firstly, the two main ingredients in expressive arts. I think if you don't have those two, to even indulge in it will be a vain exercise. Like, it's just not going to work. But as we close this podcast, I have a little fun segment where I'm going to give you a statement and you will have to say true or false. If you feel a little bit in between, you can even explain yourself. So you're ready?
Yes.
Great. So expressive arts therapy is only for people who are artistic.
Not at all. Not at
So
all.
false?
It's false, yes. It's not the skill that we work on, but the process of the creative aspect that we get into.
Got it. Parents can facilitate expressive arts-based activities without formal training.
I'd like to say false, because there is There is a lot of training that goes behind expressive arts sessions. Because when you're opening a box, it's very important for
To
you
even close it
to
back.
close it, right?
Yeah.
You just can't open a box and be like, oh
Absolutely.
God, now what do I do, right?
Absolutely.
So that comes with formal training.
Yeah.
Because you need to know how to hold space for those emotions. You need to know how to provide it a cushion if it requires.
Correct.
You need to know how to close the box, right?
Right.
So formal training is very, very important. However, like I mentioned that, some techniques where again it's a collaboration that can happen. But no, expressive arts session can only and only happen with formal training.
Got it. True or false? Neurodivergent children often express more through art than through words.
True.
True or false? Structure and spontaneity can coexist in a therapeutic space.
True. While structure provides that predictable nature to the session, which is very important for the neurodiverse learners, spontaneity brings authentic and organic mode of expression in the sessions.
Nice. The last one I have for you, true or false, is expressive arts therapy is mostly emotional, doesn't really help with social or with communication skills.
False. Expressive arts can help in social skills, life skills, again, depending on the goals and the interest of the child. It can cater to a lot of things outside just emotion needs.
Got it. And my last question for you is, how does one sign up? Because I'm interested in starting this expressive arts therapy. It sounds very, very heart-opening, honestly. So thank you so much, Priyanka, for being here, for all of these insightful, grounded, and like I said, heart-opening conversations. It was great to have you here. And I am hoping that you might be having a lot of questions for Priyanka about expressive arts therapy. So please do leave it in your comments. And like I said, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because it really helps us go a really, really long way to get folks like Priyanka right across. So until then, think of clicking on any of the videos and know more about us at India Autism Center. Thank you.